6 months ago I planted this grain and I grew some wheat. I then harvested the wheat, I then milled the wheat and made our own flour, and then from that flour I made a sourdough loaf and a yeast leavened loaf. If you want to see the whole process and the highs and lows, then watch the rest of this video. So I was driving to the school, doing a school run, taking my daughter to school, and I noticed at the corner of my eye was something red, and it was a pile of wheat which had been spilt by a local farmer. Look, I found some grain. I might plant that, I think, and see how we maybe can grow some bread. I stopped on the way back and had a bucket in the boot, and I picked up what is possibly a couple of kilos of wheat berries. But if you're wondering what the red is, it's a fungicide which is sprayed onto the wheat berries so that they can sit in the field longer without rotting. Although we run an organic garden here, I don't have a problem with sowing this wheat with a fungicide. Obviously we won't be using any other man-made chemicals or anything like that in order to grow the wheat. It will all be organic, and then hopefully if we get a harvest out of this, then those seeds, those berries, will then be organic and unsprayed. So yeah, I thought I'd give a go at planting some of this in our own field. Even if I can't use it to make bread, we'll be able to use it to feed the chickens, or we'll just use it as a bio mass for compost, and it'd be great to have something growing in this new bed. There should be enough here to plant 2 beds, so at least 1.5 beds. I'm going to be using my 6-row plate, dibber plate, to put 6 rows into the bed and then plant, and then there's about 10 centimetres, a little bit more, 10-11 centimetres in between each dibber. This is normally what I use for carrots. So that looks about right for wheat. And the spacing, I will just have to do the sowing by hand. But yeah, so let's get on and get this bed sowed, and then we'll have to wait and see what happens. Right, it's harvest day. We've had a long spell of hot weather, and the field that was sown the same time as I did this was combined 2 days ago. So I think it's the right time for me to harvest what I've got, because tomorrow the rain is supposed to come. Weather's supposed to be really bad actually. It will be hot again afterwards, but I think it makes sense to follow what the farmers do, I think. So I've got this old sickle that I found up in the loft. It was just hanging around, and I thought, oh, I could use that. And I've sharpened it up. It's not brilliant, but I think it'll be okay. I'll persevere anyway, and I'll harvest with this. Never used one before, and hey, what can go wrong? They say. So let's harvest, and then I'm going to chuck it in the back of the trailer that I've got, and then somehow store it indoors so I can then work out how to thresh it, which I think I know how I'm going to do it. But let's get the harvest in first. Right, we're a couple of weeks on now. The wheat's been in the corridor drying. I don't know whether it needed it or not, but anyway, it has, and it's nice and dry. So we're going to try and thresh it now. Nora's going to help as well. She's here. And there's several ways to thresh it, but there's one way with a bucket. I think you just stick it in the bucket and waggle it around. So we'll have a go at that. Right, as that was a bit of a failure, we'll try method 2. The backup plan is to do it all by hand, but we'll hopefully avoid that. And we'll just stuff a load into a pillowcase, and then we'll beat it around and knock it over here and tread on it, won't we? And jump on it and all sorts. Yeah. Right, let's have a look inside. Yeah. How much we might have missed, I don't know. Right, that was incredibly fun but inefficient. So something I've made is very quick and dirty. Is a homemade thresher, just a piece of doweling and some trimming string threaded through it. I'm going to pop it into there, close up the bucket, just and then give it a whirl.
Did it work?
Yeah, it does work. So you're left with all the heads, and as you can see, and then all the grain is on down below. Could do with a tiny bit longer, but in principle it works. Right, there's our wheat and chaff. You can see the berries in there. And then what we'll do next is we will winnow all this, so we get just down to these little berries. Okay, as I finished grain, I do the obligatory grain through the fingers thing that people do. The question is there enough to make a loaf of bread? So what we need to do is just pop in and weigh it. Well, 1.5 kilos. I'd like to think that's probably enough to make a loaf of bread. Okay, we're in the kitchen. We've got our 1.5 kilos of grain here. First of all, let me just address yield. Some of you might be thinking that's rubbish. Well, you're actually probably right, to be honest, but the point was never to have commercial yields of grain. It was to a kind of proof of point, really, that I can grow wheat and make a loaf of bread. So in terms of yield, I should have been expecting commercially about 4.5 tons of wheat per hectare, which if you do the maths comes down to about half a kilo per metre squared, which means I should have, and it's not really fair to compare myself, I'm a first time grower, organic grower, and to a commercial farm. And so we should have about 7 kilos of wheat, 7.5 kilos, something like that. And we've got 1.5 kilos. I'm not disappointed in any way, because I've got 1.5 kilos of wheat that I didn't have last year. And it gives me something to aim for next year in terms of upping the game. And really it's just down to inputs, fertiliser inputs, which we're addressing across our whole site for the next year. So the point is now, how do we get this and turn it into this flour? Now, we could, it would have been lovely to be able to go to the local mill, Daubla in Latvia, and say, here's my 1.5 kilos of grain. Would you mind awfully running it through your mill and turning it into flour for me, and make sure that the only flour that comes out is my flour, not everyone else's mixed in. Of course, that's impossible. So if, how do you say, if Mohammed can't go to the mountain, then the mountain must come to Mohammed, turning a famous phrase the other way around. So what we're going to do is, I've got one of these bad boys. It's a mock mill, and I'm going to unbox this and show you how this works, and we're going to mill our own flour here on a homestead in Latvia. Okay, so here's the mock mill, all unpackaged. I won't go into great detail in this video about how it works, maybe a different video. And here's our grain, and I've measured, well, I've not measured it out, I've just poured it in here to make it easier. So what I'm going to do is switch on the mock mill now, and we'll see it working, and see our flour come out from down here. Okay, so our wheat is now milled, and I put it into a lovely branded bag. I'm going to make 2 loaves of bread, a sourdough loaf with a starter and a yeast leavened loaf. So here I am making the 2 loaves. I'm not going to go into great detail about making bread, I've got other videos on that. But there's the yeast on the left and the sourdough on the right. The yeast I can do straight away, and so that's proven, and now I'll put it into a pan to bake. And the sourdough I actually made the next day, but here they are, the 2 loaves together. They've risen okay, but what to be expected of wholemeal flour is particularly difficult to bake with. Put them in the oven, gas oven and the wood oven, and here they are made, and our bread is done. Okay, here we are at the end of our journey. Both breads have baked, and they're okay. The purpose of this video was not to make amazing bread. I've got other videos to demonstrate that. We're at the end of our journey, and it feels like a long journey. 6 months ago, we planted the seed, the grain, and we sowed it, and we grew it, and we harvested our grain, and then we milled our grain to make our own flour, and then from the flour we baked this bread. And they both come out okay, like I just said. We baked this one yesterday actually, and the yeast one, and the sourdough I had to wait obviously overnight for it to ferment. But you know, the point was, you know, could we make our own bread? Could we make a product which was passable, edible? And yeah, we could have filtered the flour and made it finer and got some of the wholemeal out to make it better, you know, easier to use, and all the technical stuff like that. But I'm not going to worry about that. Let's have a quick look at the bread. So this is the sourdough that was baked this morning. quite nice. And this is, you know, leavened with yeast. You know, the rye bread here in Latvia would be more dense than this anyway. I'm not worried about how dense it is. I think it's nice too. You know, both perfectly edible with some butter and stuff like that. Very nice. People are conditioned to think of bread as this white kind of fluffy thing that's huge, and you know, most of what you're buying is air. I'd love to do this project again with rye, and maybe I'll do that next year, but we'll see. And but yeah, here we are at the end. If you made it this far to the end of the video, thank you. I don't know how long the video will end up being, but as I said, it's been filmed over the last 6 months, and you know, mission accomplished. We made our bread. We made perfectly edible bread, and we'll enjoy eating that over the next couple of days. And we've got grain to plant next year to continue the journey, and we'll try and do better with the yields and stuff like that. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions or comments, please do leave them down in the comment section below, and I'll look forward to engaging with those. If you've liked the video at any point, give us a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate that, and do subscribe and continue the journey with us for more videos in the future. So all I'll say is bye bye for now, and I'll see you in the next video.